You speak English, sure, but every time you open your mouth, it feels like there's a block between your thoughts and your tongue. You know exactly what you want to say, but the words don't come out right. And you dumb things down just to get through the sentence. I do it too when I speak Spanish. If I get stuck, I just pick easier words. I mean, I get my point across, but not as sharply or as eloquently as I would in my native English. Why does it feel like your intelligence gets lost in translation? The truth? It's not your intelligence. It's not your accent. It's not even your grammar. It's your vocabulary. Without the right words, your ideas stay trapped inside. You can't express emotion, nuance, or depth. You can't fully be you. There's a lot of talk about 10,000 words online. Supposedly it's a magic number for fluency. So I took a vocabulary test to see how many words I know. And Mrs. D, a non-native speaker, took it too. And the results, honestly, surprised the both of us. We'll come back to that. Here's the real point. It doesn't really matter what your score is, whether it's high or low. The truth is the same. Fluency isn't about chasing a number. It's about building your vocabulary until the right words just come naturally, without thinking. That's when you stop translating in your head and start truly speaking English. And today I'll show you the best way to get there. Spoiler alert, it's not just comprehensible input. Here's the plan. Today we need to talk about 10,000 words, the best way to get 10,000 words into your head, and why it might not be comprehensible input. So first, why 10,000 words? Is 10,000 words what you really need? Because 10,000 words is a lot of words. It's said that you can have basic conversational fluency with just 1,000 to 2,000 words. And that's because we use the same common words a disproportionate amount of the time. Are, on, in, good, bad, yes, no, easy, difficult, think, be, me, you. And supposedly with 10,000 words, you're capable of participating in debates, discussing abstract topics, and understanding a wider range of media, including academic texts and specialized topics. Your average native speaker is said to have somewhere between 20 and 40,000 words. Clearly a massive range, allowing for differing levels of education, technical expertise, or areas of interest. But these numbers are too big. They're hard to visualize and relate to. So I ran an experiment, native versus non-native. Me as a native and Mrs. D as a non-native, but pretty advanced English speaker. Just for some context, Mrs. D works with Americans. Her English is pretty good, but it isn't her first language. Ay, papi, I wish I could do this stupid meeting in Spanish. I can't say what I want. We both took an online vocabulary test. Obviously, they can't test you on 40,000 words. These tests work by testing your knowledge of a relatively small sample of words of varying difficulty. They then extrapolate the results to give an estimated size of vocabulary. Some ask you to select the words you know from a list like this. I know tandem means sort of two things together. I know weasel is a little type of a little animal. Yes, I know that one. Barnacle is like a shell creature. Burgeoning, yes. Prig sounds familiar, I know the word, but I couldn't really tell you what it means, so I'm going to leave that one out. I got 25,950 words. A bit disappointing considering the native range that we talked about earlier, but still a solid proficient on the scale. I took a different type of test too, just to make sure. This one asked me to match words to definitions. I know Thor means to melt. I know a ditch is similar to a trench. Ephemeral sounds familiar, but I'm not sure. It's either eternal or temporary. Let's go with temporary. This time I got 33,861. It described me as C2. Massive range of results, so clearly a big margin for error, but both within the expected range for a native speaker. That gives me an average score of 29,905.5. Let's call it 29,906. Then Mrs. D had a go. She knew masticate was to chew, but she got a few wrong that I would have known. She didn't know heifer was a cow, for example.
Because heifer.
She got an estimated 29,128, which I think was probably a bit of an overestimate. And she was keen to quit when she was ahead and retired from competition after the first test. I'd take these results with a pinch of salt. That means I'm slightly skeptical. They're not entirely believable. But based on those results, our 10,000 words that we're talking about seems a pretty low target, and probably the minimum you want to be playing with if you want to be fluent and confident in most situations. Now, these tests are readily available online, but you're not going to sit down, get 1,000 words, then go and study for a bit and come back and get 1,100. They're just very rough ballpark figures. Maybe come back in 6 months and see if you've gone up a bit. I think a better test is, do you feel like you have enough words in your head? You could probably do with a few more. The question then becomes how? What's the best way? There are two broad schools of thought. One, dedicated learning. Two, comprehensible input. Dedicated learning is basically making a list and memorizing it. You could do this by category, by covering the words and writing them out, or with flashcards. That's a lot of flashcards. But essentially, it's an exercise in memorization. Comprehensible input is a theory that says the best way to acquire language is to absorb comprehensible input. That's reading or listening where you understand most of it, but there are a few things that you don't know. And based on the context surrounding it that you do understand, your brain figures out the new information, and then you can understand it. And the best part, because you've acquired this new language in real life situations or in reading something that you're interested in, you're more likely to retain it and for it to stay in your memory. Now, which is best, dedicated learning or comprehensible input? Well, there are some issues with both approaches. There's obviously a repetition element to memory. So if you make lists, like in dedicated learning, you can systematically reinforce new vocabulary at optimized intervals. And the amount of comprehensible input required to match that is massive to achieve the frequency required for memorization. That's a limiting factor that can make relying exclusively on comprehensible input slow. And comprehensible input is backed up by academic studies, but they can't really account for dedicated learners locking themselves away in a cabin in the woods for 2 weeks and ploughing through lists and lists of vocabulary all day long. Now, whether that approach is sustainable or not, I don't know. And there's the problem with dedicated learning. Most normal people find it boring and give up. So I propose the best way to reach 10,000 words is a hybrid method, the best of both worlds. I've seen this work for my students, and it helped me to make a massive improvement in a short amount of time when I was learning French. Back in 2017, I had to learn French fast. I got an English teaching job at a French school, and it was conditional on speaking French. I was honest at the interview, like, I don't speak any French. Je ne parle le français. And they were like, you better get learning. So for about 3 months over the summer before the start of the school term, I studied every day. And I got to a half decent level, like maybe a B1, but still a bit wobbly. I then calmed down a bit and gradually built this up over the next 2 years to a solid B2, maybe C1. Although I don't use it regularly anymore, so I'm definitely a bit rusty now. You need to get serious about the study and hit it from various angles. I call it Mr. D's D3 method. Discover, deepen, deploy. Click the link in the description to get the free D3 PDF. With basic comprehensible input, new words begin to get familiar over time as you begin to get a sense of their meaning in context. Too slow. With D3, we target them and capture them. Step 1, discover. I'm not giving you a list of 1,000 words or 10,000 words to learn. That would be full of useless words that you'd never use. You're going to discover the words in the real life English that you consume. That could be in this video, when you're listening to your favourite podcast, or when you're reading Harry Potter. Expelliarmus. Expelliarmus. Don't just put any old word that you don't know on your list. Find out what it means, either from context or look it up, and focus on high impact vocabulary, words that show up in real situations. Skip the technical or overly academic terms unless they're relevant to you. A quick test: do native speakers use this? Would I actually use this in a conversation? If the answer is yes, then move it on to the next D. Step 2, deepen. Here we make the word unforgettable. Write the word, write where you originally discovered it, and write an example sentence using the word. But not just the cat sat on the mat. The more personal or emotional you can make the example, the more sticky it will be as a memory. You could even make it a little bit naughty if you're so inclined. And remember, if you're not sure about your examples, you can always drop them in the YouTube comment section, and I'm sure somebody will be happy to provide some constructive feedback. I'll always respond if I can. Or harness AI. Put your example in and ask if it's correct and appropriate use. Step 3, deploy. Move the word from something you know to something you use automatically. Have you heard about active and passive vocabulary? Passive vocabulary are the words that you might recognize and understand, but you're not really going to use them in your speaking or writing. Active vocabulary are the words that you understand and you're confident to use. So in the deploy stage, we take the word from passive and make it active. How do we do that? We need to use it in real life 3 times. This could be in actual real life, or in a recorded solo speaking session, or in a YouTube comment. Drop your deployed version with a little rocket picture so that we know that you're putting it into play. D3 is about consuming input, but with intent. Get the D3 PDF guide for free with the link in the description. See you next time.